Okay, I think we're in a good shape here. We're just a few minutes after the hour, and I would just like to, again, extend my welcome to this presentation on the TraceHarvest Network. Wanted to do a few things here as we got started. First and foremost is to welcome you to the webinar. I will be the host and providing some structure to the webinar here. My name is Sid Siefken. I work as the commercial lead for the agricultural marketplace within BlockApps. And we've got a great group of folks with us today that are really going to help understand a little bit about blockchain and traceability. Many of you may be aware of the fact that we had made an introduction, a press release in mid-November. And our intent here today is to really bring that announcement to life and put some context to it. We'll be able to give you a tour of the TraceHarvest Network, maybe give you some understanding of how we went about solving a business problem, and then look at ways in which maybe we can extend that to other parts of the agricultural supply chain. As we get started here, we wanted to just indicate that we're happy to have you record some questions, specifically in the Q&A section of the webinar. So I think we've got a slide on that will show us that Q&A box to type into. So if we advance to that, will be great. So make sure you drop your question in here as we go into the Q&A, not necessarily the chat. That way we can address those questions as we go through there. On to the agenda. As we get started here, this will be an introduction of the people that will be guiding us on this tour. We're going to give about a 5-minute intro, 10 minutes to look at some of the value proposition for growers, manufacturers, dealers, and processors. And then Victor's going to lead us into really a demonstration of the platform. So you can feel, touch, feel, see how it works as we go through there, and then we'll look at some next opportunities, have some Q&A at the end. So as we move, we'll just start right into introductions. Again, I'll go ahead and start with Victor. Victor, if you would do an introduction of yourself, and we'll continue to hello and welcome. My name is Sid Siefken. I just wanted to welcome you into our presentation
I am founder and chief product officer.
We have a few more folks that are joining
I
here.
oversee our strategic product roadmap as well as large-scale client implementations, which means I've been working on what is now the TraceHarvest project since the start several years ago with Michael and Abha, right from the beginning, right from the design phase. In addition to my role at BlockApps, I'm also one of the founders of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which is the world's largest open standards blockchain project. And I continue to serve on the board of that organization with companies like Microsoft, JP Morgan, Accenture, and Tower, just to name a few. Abha, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Abha Khandelwal. I'm currently data strategy lead in product supply. I'm a scientist by training, but I grew up in a business family experiencing and internalizing importance of customer and operational efficiency to business. In my previous role, we were looking for ways to bring transparency and efficiency for our customer-focused operations. I got connected with Michael Pareles, and he said, yes, there is a technology that can help you. And I got onto this project and started working from the beginning with Victor and the BlockApps team, and very proud to see the progress we have made together. Happy to be here to have this conversation with you all this morning. Mike?
Thanks, Abha. Michael Pareles, I'm the Digital Strategy and Growth Lead at Bayer CropScience, which means I am focused on helping to develop and find new digital business models for our agriculture business. I also co-lead our blockchain Center of Excellence, thinking about ways where we can take this technology and implement it across our organization, often across the industry, to bring value to our growers. Like Abha, my background, actually, I'm a city boy from New York. And my first experience with agriculture was actually working with smallholder farmers in Western China. But it's inspired me to make it a career, and getting digital tools in the hands of growers, both large and small, is what inspires me. So I have the pleasure of kicking us off by starting to give everyone a little idea of how does our value chain work, and what was the problem that TraceHarvest was originally designed to solve. So I'll start off, what you see in front of you is the general way that physical grain moves in most economies. So the physical movement of grain goes from, and we're talking essentially starting with the seed, right? It starts with the seed manufacturer, the input provider, which in this case is us, Bayer. It then moves to a dealer or retailer, essentially in most value chains, think of that as a distributor. And that distributor then takes that seed and gives it to a grower who puts it in the ground and makes food. So when that grain is harvested, it then goes to what we call a grain elevator, which you can think of kind of as like a local consolidation point for all the farmers in a certain area who are growing a certain type of grain. In this case, we're talking about soybeans and corn. So what was our problem at Bayer CropScience that we approached BlockApps to help us solve? So Bayer CropScience, we do a lot of really interesting things with agricultural technology, right? We help develop important seeds. We do crop protection. We also are involved in the digital technology space for farm management software, so growers can better manage their farms, doing more with less. But so part of our product portfolio is that we have these seeds which need to be identity preserved, right? So the value to the grower and to the end consumer is that they know where these grains come from. Historically, we have helped the value chain with this traceability through a very manual process. I mean, we literally, in the past, have paid people to follow the grain, literally, right, hand deliver it from a dealer to a grower, go and watch a grower put it in the ground, right? We write that down on a piece of paper, so we have a record. Come back at harvest time, watch them take it out of the ground, write that down on a piece of paper again, and then hand deliver it to an elevator. As you can imagine, this process is highly manual, right? High friction, not user-friendly, not scalable, at least not to any point that's commercially significant. And also, very difficult to incorporate, all the new data elements that, consumers and governments are starting to demand from their food, from its like traceability and provenance. So our mission as a business team, Abha and I and several of our colleagues, was to see, could we take that system and help create a digitized system that was much more scalable, lower friction, more user-friendly, that not only would be able to start to incorporate new data sets, new types of data that consumers wanted, but also data sets that maybe aren't available yet or that consumers don't even know yet that they want. And to do that not just for one country or one region, but at a model that was globally deployable. So in 2018, approaching this problem, we found BlockApps, right, a leader in the enterprise blockchain space, to help us come up with that solution. And we came up with some key insights. The first was, when you think about traceability, usually you think about physically tagging the physical asset as it moves through a value chain, right? So you think about QR codes, you think about RFID chips, things that will physically follow the grain all the way to the end user. Well, when you're talking about a product that transforms, right, goes into the ground, comes out as something entirely different, QR codes and RFID aren't really going to help. So working with Victor and the team, we had this insight. When we go to each of these personas in the value chain, each of them already has some sort of trusted third-party system that tracks the physical asset while it is in their possession, right? That already does the hard work of taking a physical asset and making it a digital asset so you can track it along the chain digitally. So in this case, we identified a couple different systems that operate at each point. At Bayer, we have our ERP system, and then we also use DocuSign to digitally sign contracts. For our dealer, right, we have their local ERP system. For the grower, they have their field management software, in this case, Climate Field View, which is a subsidiary of Bayer and the leading agronomic management software platform in the world. And then at the elevator, there are a variety of different platforms, Bushel being one great platform which connects the ERP and CRMs of grain elevators. So we made this realization, but at the same time, we have these systems that at each point track the physical asset digitally, but the problem is they don't talk to each other. So how could we solve that? Well, what we realized is that if we just were able to make these systems talk to each other, we could track the physical asset digitally throughout the entire process. Enter blockchain. Blockchain is that backbone which we have been able to use to link these digital systems, thus providing a level of traceability and transparency in the ag value chain, which was not previously possible. What this has done for us over the past 2 years that we've been working with BlockApps on their platform is that it's obviously solved this pain point of this expensive, high friction manual tracking system. And it's created a scalable, extensible, verifiable tracking process that can take in new data and even be deployed cheaply enough, not just for high value products, but even potentially for commodity products. And not least of all, as an ag technology company working with some progressive partners downstream, it's also driven digital transformation, our partner network, which opens up so many more opportunities for new business models and other opportunities to increase the livelihood of our grower customers. So with that, I'll turn it over to Victor, who will maybe talk a little bit more about the system itself.
Thank you, Mike. So one of the things is that we realized, Bayer challenged us to build a system that could scale globally across many products, across many regions, and many kinds of different workflows. And, as we kind of went about this project, what we realized is we could take these years of learning, technology, integration, best practices that we created and extend this to the entire ag industry. Because really, if you look at the ag industry on the whole, they have similar traceability problems, particularly seed traceability problems that Bayer has. So we want to be able to take this technology and bring it to that wider industry scale. And Bayer fully supported this. We really appreciate that. And one of the reasons they did is that by having traceability, particularly seed traceability, it really unlocks a bunch of ag industry initiatives that are really trying to kind of get off the ground. And these include things like food system resiliency and sustainability requirements that people are facing. So in order to kind of think about that global view, we took those original roles and we expanded them outward. So we started off with the input providers, and we are including seed providers broadly, but we're also including other inputs that are needed to grow that food and bring it out of the ground. That includes things like chemistry, fertilizer, even the equipment that's used to harvest that. That can all be included under the input provider category. Now, the other area that we've really focused on is around the processors. One of the challenges when we've talked to food processors is they have to make a lot of different claims about the ingredients that they're putting in food, and they're liable for those claims. So they wanted to know, where are those ingredients coming from and how accurate are the claims that we're making around that? So the system is being expanded to include that as well. And then from the grower dealer side, by building in more visibility, it really allows them to plan and also have better information about the products that they're using and give them real just-in-time information to maximize the value of that product. So with some specialty products, you may need to use, particular ways of growing them or particular techniques. Now, you may have gotten training for that, months ago before the start of the growing season, but our system allows you to get that information in real time as you need it. So with that, I'm going to jump into an actual demo of the system itself. So this is the TraceHarvest system as it stands today. Now, what you're seeing right now is a global dashboard that gives you an overview of where all the seeds are and all the products are currently in the supply chain. If you look at this top section up here, you'll see that it starts from the agreements. So, the purchase order agreements between the growers and the seed provider, or it could be between the dealers and the growers itself. And then you see total units committed on those contracts. And then as those units move to the dealer, to the grower, and as they're planted in the ground, all that is reflected here. And then in addition to that, as they get harvested, you also see the bushels harvested by the growers and being received by the processors themselves, in addition to things like returns or unharvested units. Like at the bottom right here, you see a kind of overview of how things look like at any point in the season. And ideally, by the end of the season, all of these should be green. If they're not there, then you know kind of where in the supply chain to look for challenges or things that you might want to kind of look at. And then at the bottom, we have these individual agreements that you can see. Abha, I know you were very instrumental in making this user-friendly and kind of tuning this dashboard. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Absolutely, Victor. You make it look like very simple. And based on our experience, we know it's not just the dashboard. The way you get this information through blockchain, the information between each of these styles, if we don't have the blockchain available to us, can take from days to weeks to months. And it takes tons of resources to get that information. Having the blockchain run in the background, we have access to this information in near real time. As the season is progressing, we are seeing the data come on each of these styles, and we can make better decisions and do what we need to do and focus on that.
Thanks, Abha. And so let's dive into what one of these actual agreements look like. So I'm just going to skip ahead here. So if you look on the individual agreement level, this is what it looks like. On this top left-hand side, you can see the agreement name, the dealer, the grower, and the product that they're being identified. So each product, all of these agreements are represented by a smart contract on the blockchain that's updated by different parties. And you can see the movement of the physical goods on this left-hand side, which is similar to the dashboard that you see, and that rolls up into powering the dashboard itself. Now, over on the right-hand side, this is where some interesting things are starting to happen. Now, based on the product that they've chosen, we create a series of events. Now, these events are things that need to happen in order for that product to be confirmed. Now, these events right now, you see it for a very simple product. An agreement has been signed, a stewardship requirements are given, some other orders are created. But these events can also include more complex requirements, like it has to use, for example, let's say it's an organic product. You need to verify or certify that you've only used no chemicals or certain types of fertilizer. All of that can be encompassed in the events themselves. And Abha, I know this is a particular area of interest to you, so you want to talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is very interesting. In the previous screenshot, what we saw is complete mass balance analysis and all of the view end to end. Here we have the ability to deep dive into individual contracts. And if we are tracking throughout the season, we want to know where exactly is each of the contract. The information is on our fingertips. And also it's very customizable. We start with one particular product type and we have certain requirements that are listed here as event. If we need to change, we can very easily do that. So just the flexibility system allows us is very user-friendly.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. So this system was designed to these events can be added dynamically, and they are based on a per product basis. The other thing that's important to understand about these events is that they can also be wherever we can, we try and draw this information from existing systems, as Mike mentioned earlier. However, sometimes that information isn't available, or perhaps that information was incorrect when it was brought in. So in the system itself, we have the ability to override those inputs. And what that allows us to do is to build a profile each of those inputs has a blockchain identity. And over time, what that allows us to do is build a profile of the reliability of each of those systems. So what we can see is how well a system is performing, not just within the walls of your organization, but across the entire supply chain. And part of that, as we override these events, the original events and the new ones are all kept. And I'll show you how that looks like in the second tab here, which is the audit log. Just jump there. So we're jumping into the audit log. As I mentioned, all the events here are captured from creation of events and also where those systems and the values that come in. Abha, I know this feature and the export feature are near and dear to your heart in compliance.
Absolutely. And I just cannot overemphasize the importance of this audit log and the way it brings trust between different partners. It's a once database, once information is there, it's there to exist. And if somebody wants to make any changes, it's again date and time stamped. And what we observed this season due to COVID, where all the auditors cannot travel and do the verification, here is a beautiful log that can be exported in a very user-friendly format, and they can actually look through all the information and confirm and verify that yes, all the requirements were met as per the plan and the protocol.
Thanks, Abha. And then the last feature we'll touch on is this exceptions feature. What exceptions are is it allows you to create effectively notifications or alerts when things are not happening quite the way you expect them to. So for example, if you have a specialty product that has some particular requirements, you might want to be alerted earlier in the season, not waiting until the end of the season for something so you can kind of actionably affect that result. Abha, back to you.
Yeah, this is, again, going back to the theme of flexibility and customizable. We have a particular protocol or a requirement for a given product, but there are times where we have to make exceptions to the rule, and we do not want that to show up as non-compliance. Having this feature allows us to be more proactive in adding those definitions so it can be executed and allowed for those participants where it's applicable.
Thanks, Abha. And with that, we'll jump back into the presentation right now. So what's next for TraceHarvest? Now, before we get into the future and where we are today, let's talk a little bit more about the past and what is kind of achieved and all the work that's been put into TraceHarvest so far. Abha, you want to touch on the first three phases?
Absolutely. It's very interesting. At Bayer CropScience, we knew about our requirements and what we need, and BlockApps definitely knew all about the technology. And we began the design phase literally sitting around a table. I don't know, Victor, you remember that or not, but we had a lot of conversations about the traceability requirements and capabilities, and we never looked back. We were able to put together, the team was able to put together the prototype, have some defined roles and models. And once we had the prototype in hand, we were able to do a small pilot with a handful of real dealer, grower, and elevator. And throughout the season, as we are testing the capabilities for the TraceHarvest network, we were also collecting the feedback to make sure that what we are developing is really useful and adds value to our customer. And we continue to build, incorporate that feedback and do the continuous technical advancement. And then once we are ready to do launch at scale with a lot more partners and technical integrations, we are being successful with that. And throughout, starting from the design phase, we have this in our mind that what we are developing should be globally deployable and modular in nature, because all of our product lines across the geography have their own set of rules and requirements. So we don't want to develop something that's very fixed and not customizable. And in our experience, starting from the beginning was a bit time consuming, but once we have built this template, it's much easier to customize to meet our needs. And we are very happy, and I'll hand it over to Victor to talk about TraceHarvest.
Thank you, Abha. So as Abha has mentioned, all this work has gone in to really create a template that is highly customizable for any ag industry player. Now, we know that it's not one size fits all solution. So where we are today is we are working and identifying key industry agriculture players and understanding their value drivers so we can use this template that's been proven over several growing seasons and adapt it to make sure that it can provide the value that they are looking for. So, after we kind of have identified those key parties and worked with them, then we want to grow that overall number of parties that we're working with until we really extend this out to be a solution that kind of transforms the entire ag industry. So this is our vision of how ultimately the end state will look like. And the ones indicated in green are things that TraceHarvest supports out of the box today. That template supports those key roles, and it's all those integrations have been working, are already working. However, this is just an example of the indication of the breadth and scale of the number of partners and key players that we want to work with. So if you don't see your logo here, please don't take offense. These are just examples. But we want to really say to you, we're open to everyone, and we're looking forward to working with you. Sid, I'll hand it over to you a little bit to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Certainly, as we address the wider ecosystem, we know that we have the ability to take this template and move it into these various other parts of the industry. And for sure, and to confirm, right, TraceHarvest starts at the seed level. And I think it's unique that we start at the seed, move it into production, and then on to processors. But as we really move into this era of more and higher levels of traceability in the food system, I think there's going to be interest from processors that are more and more wanting to understand exactly how their ingredients are being sourced, how they're being produced, et cetera. And so we know that all these pieces will come together, and we're preparing for that as we move to that. So some of the key points that we wanted to share with you here at the end in terms of, TraceHarvest, why now, some of what our thoughts are going forward. First of all, I want to leave you with a couple things. Field proven, in production, and with the ability to make the next expansion into the agricultural marketplace. I think the proven part is important because we've learned a lot as we went through this process. We understand a little bit about the needs of growers, the needs of being able to have it repeatable over multiple seasons. From a security standpoint, very important that we have role-based access to data, that the data is contained on private chains and that there's an adequate amount of permissioning involved so that there is security around that information that's being shared on the blockchain. We heard the word customizable a couple of times, and not only inside of this application, but as we start to expand to the wider ecosystem, I think that becomes very important. I know that, for instance, we've looked at this from a workflow perspective, taking a look at this from a seed input perspective, but it could be just as easily not only a bag of seed, but a tote of herbicide that's tracked, a ton of fertilizer, a bag of potatoes, a barrel of oil, energy to dry the grain. All of these things can be traced on that blockchain, and part of that is defined around how those contracts are in place. Those smart contracts, as defined, right, can list out those individual assets. So our ability to help track that product as it moves through the production cycle into the harvested crop, I think, is extremely important. I know that, for example, other areas of interest that we're looking at is the elevators and grain procurement companies, as they're wanting to gain additional help with contract management, contract settlement, building relationships between growers, buyers. Those are all things that the industry will continue to drive as we go forward. So I think that brings us to kind of the point where we wanted to say, for me, bring us the information that you would have if this has sparked interest within your business. If there's applications that we might have the opportunity to assist with, again, I will be your primary point of contact. Would be eager to meet, discuss directly what those applications can be, and if there's leverage that we can get from all of the good work here that the team has done. I think that as we move to the Q&A section, from my perspective, I wanted to thank you specifically for taking time out of your day to join. Thank you to Victor, Michael, Abha for providing us this overview, and eager to work with us, work with you, and we'll continue to expand the technology into the agricultural market segment. Now with that, let's ask and review a few of the questions that would have came in during the presentation.
Thanks, Sid, and yeah, thank you everyone. This is Caleb from BlockApps. I'm just taking a look at the questions and answers we've got in the section. We've got 17 questions and counting, and I know we've budgeted about 15 minutes for this, so I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of it, but there are a lot of good questions, and we will definitely get back to you if we don't answer it now. We've also got 150 people still here with us, and thank you for being with us. But I'll just get started with some of the ones that are maybe quicker to answer or have been covered a little bit already and can be reiterated. The first one is from Raja Ramachandran, and they're asking a clarifying question for you, Victor. Are you using the public Ethereum protocol or Quorum? Is their question.
Yes, and the answer is no to both. So we are using a permissioned enterprise blockchain that is based on Ethereum, but is in no way connected to the public Ethereum network. So there's no cryptocurrency exposure. And we built our own version of that. In fact, we were the first company to build their own independent version of Ethereum that we call Strato.
Yep, thank you, Victor. I hope that answers your question, Raja. And check out BlockApps Strato for more information there. Another question we have is from Marquis Allen. I think it was asked around the time we were looking at the exceptions in the demo. He asks, if you add a new decision point into any smart contract, how seamless is that activity? Does it disrupt the smart contract from executing when it's being changed or updated? How would that work, I think? And Victor, maybe you can cover that, or Abha, if you have some points there too.
Yeah, maybe I'll start and then I'll hand it over to Abha a little bit. So one of the things is that we realized that at this stage of we actually tried to implement early on kind of forcing operational requirements. And what that wound up doing was actually making the data that we got less reliable. So instead of doing that, what we did is we made it a flexible system that can kind of take any input whenever it comes. And the exceptions is designed to basically flag if those requirements are, for example, coming out of order or later than we expect. Abha, do you want to touch a little bit on that too?
Well said, Victor. You covered it really good.
Thanks. Okay, Caleb, back to you.
Thanks, Victor. I've got another question here that we do actually get a lot, so I think it's important to get to. It's from Erin Houston, and she's asking, who will decide who can change, get access to, view, or edit data on the network?
I'm assuming I should take that question first. So the way our networks are set up, it's really a constellation of private chains. We've talked about this concept. So one of the things that differentiates BlockApps Strato from other variants of Ethereum is that we have this idea of private chains that Sid has alluded to, which allows different areas to be controlled by a smaller group of people. So one analogy I like to use is if you think of the entire TraceHarvest network as like, a newsfeed on a social network, these private chains act as sort of like chat groups where only invited members can participate and control the information there. So for example, if another seed company would not be able to see all the information that's on the Bayer private chain. And that's an important feature that we needed to really establish and create in order for the TraceHarvest architecture to work. Because we know, exposing data is a crucial requirement for this to really be an industry solution.
And Victor, can I add on top of that? I think you
yeah,
did a good
please.
job of talking about that data security from an enterprise to enterprise perspective. But another aspect in our particular implementation of the TraceHarvest network at Bayer is grower sovereignty of their own data. So from the very beginning, designed this with in mind that growers have to actively share their data, right? We're not automatically taking it through any sort of system. Growers agree from the beginning to actively share their data, and they give us permission, right, to share it with specific entities. So it's actually, as Victor said, private and permissioned on a variety of levels, and in different implementation and designed such that in other implementations, those rules can be changed based upon the particular preferences of whatever entities are involved. But certainly at Bayer, we take grower sovereignty of their data as paramount, and we have enshrined, made sure that that was enshrined, right, in our implementation of the TraceHarvest network.
Thanks, Mike. Caleb, any other questions?
Yeah, thanks to you both. And actually, I know we started with 14 questions. Now there are 23. So we're going as fast as we can. But to give maybe a little bit more ag focused, I'm a little product bias. Here's one that I think can be tag teamed by everyone. It's from Jason Jimerson. And he says, I see that the dashboard holds a quote unquote seed unit as what I'm seeing as the lowest common denominator to be tracked. And he asks, do you envision people to be able to track other input information to be used in conjunction with that seed unit, such as seed treatments, and I'm not familiar with this, but in-furrow products, etc.?
Abha, you want to take that one on first? Or?
I think you go ahead, Victor.
Okay.
Quick answer is yes.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. So yeah, so yes, we see that the system is designed to be, first of all, what is a unit, right? Like the system is designed to be kind of future-proof in that the reason why we describe it as units is that the system can be flexible to different types of units as they go. It could be a bag of seeds, it could be a pallet of seeds, or given new technologies, it might be an individual seed one day. There are tagging technologies that are using genomic type tracking that could accommodate that. So it's accommodating that. You also notice that the events themselves can be expanded to really track anything around that seed. It could be chemistry, fertilizer, equipment, even how things are handled. Like, for example, where things are stored or field isolation events. Mike, you want to add a little bit to this?
Yeah, and I'd say, one of the reasons that, we saw at Bayer that blockchain was a potential solution for a really ideal solution for this type of traceability is because we wanted something that would be able to incorporate, anticipate that there would be other data sets, other data points that we'd want to capture. So, I think one of the questions talked about, early part of this question, talked about RFID data. And so, right at the moment, right, RFID data would not be enough to track a seed throughout the system, but certainly, right, it could be useful for certain parts of the value chain. And we want to be able to incorporate that data in and link it, right, to the container data we have about the seed. When it comes to talking about crop protection, right, jugs of, where the unit is jugs, right, whatever the widget is. But we've linked with Climate Field View, which collects information around seed, but also about application of crop protection, tillage, in-furrow activities. Eventually even potentially carbon intensity, which could link to sustainability efforts and carbon credit markets. So right now the system is, at Bayer we linked it to Field View, but you can think about it also being linked to some other products on that market, right? Granular, R7, that gather any sort of related information. So I think that's definitely part of the vision that BlockApps has for the network, and certainly one that Bayer hopes they execute.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 2 minutes left here. I'm going to try and shoehorn 2 questions into this time. And I'll do one really quickly just because I know it was a question I had early on in the process, and I know Victor can explain it really well. It's from Warren Lamb, and Warren is asking if you can speak about the process of integrating the blockchain with multiple local ERP systems, the high degree of variability in their data, and I was asking too when I was talking before, the high degree of complexity in their data. How are we going to handle that situation?
Right. That's a great question, and this is one of the this is one of the really important points in that we wanted to create a system. We had to create a system that was usable today, but could be used and future-proofed for new sets of data in the future. So one of the key concepts that we introduced and to the TraceHarvest network is the idea that integration points have identities in themselves. When most people talk about identity, they really think about an individual or an organization, but we have identities where we flagged data sources as having identities. Why is that important? Well, I mentioned that because those integration points have individual identities. We can actually create reputations around the information they provide. And as time goes on, we can kind of weigh how valuable or how accurate the data they provide is. To answer the second question, part of the template of TraceHarvest, what comes out of the box is these data models that we've created that are both very flexible, but also easy to update on the blockchain itself. And all of that is embedded in the smart contracts that we use for the TraceHarvest network.
Thanks, Victor. Yep, I knew we would get that one clearly. I think we're almost at the end here. So there are two questions that are kind of similar that we could close out on. And then Sid, I'll turn it to you for closing remarks and thank you. Anyone who didn't get a question answered, please feel free to contact us. Sid's email is right there and he's ready to get the information to you. I'm seeing though two questions pretty similar from Devika Balatradhan and Steve Cole. They're essentially both asking a question along the lines of what are the plans for extension beyond the processor? How do we get this information all the way to the consumer? Is that going to happen soon? And what would that look like?
Yeah, maybe I can take the first shot of that. We definitely want to make sure that ultimately the information is available to the consumer. But we have seen that there are a lot of other projects that are kind of looking at the farm to table aspect of traceability. And we really wanted to focus on an area that was untouched, which is this, seed to processor traceability. And so how that will work in terms of bringing that is that ultimately we want to extend further, but we also see the ability to collaborate with other efforts that are trying to make more visibility on the consumer side itself. So it's both that we will grow our network, but we're open to collaborating and working with other solutions that are really focused on that problem.
Victor, thank you for that. Again, really appreciate all of the good questions that have come in. There'll be some great follow-up work for me to do post this call. As noted, my email is at the top of this slide. Feel free to connect with me directly. On behalf of BlockApps, I certainly want to extend my thanks to Michael and Abha for sharing their information here, being able to help lead this effort, and to put us in a position where we can grow and expand this technology into the agricultural marketplace. Victor, thank you for your technical review, demonstration and explanation, very beneficial for myself. And to all of those that have joined, again, thank you for your time. I trust we had shared information with you that you have found beneficial. And as you move forward, and if you think that there is a blockchain application that can assist with your business processes, please reach out to the BlockApps team, myself in particular, as your primary point of contact, and we'll be happy to assist you as we all move down this journey together. So with that, I appreciate all, and we will conclude the webinar for the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.